Hey guys, welcome back to the WODdoc. This is another edition of WODdoc Wadcast, where we take special guests on to come in and talk about things and topics and adventures that we can't normally cover in our 3 to 5 minute video. I'm pleased to announce that we have Mike Bledsoe here. If you guys haven't seen him, you have to jump onto Barbell Shrugged podcast. I mean, he's more famous than anybody else I know in CrossFit nowadays. At least in the education world, he's a big idol of mine, and I'm just so stoked that he was able to jump on here for me. So, Mike, just tell us a little bit more about yourself. Your laundry list is about 8.5 miles long, so I need just the highlights, right?
Thanks for having me. Let's see. I've been working in fitness since I was like 15. So, I discovered weights and whatnot going to the grocery store, picking up a Muscle and Fitness magazine, probably a lot like you.
Absolutely.
And I fell in love with it, started lifting weights, had no idea what I was doing. I actually counted myself lucky because I never skipped leg day, even though like most 15, 16-year-olds, it's like all about the bench press. But my fitness career was a little bit of just being a gym rat in high school, playing a few different sports, going into the Navy, being a gym rat there.
I didn't know you were a Navy guy. Wow, I should have known
that. Yeah. Let's see. I did a lot of running, swimming, and lifting weights in the Navy. Got out. I went to school. I was like, I don't know what I want to do, but I'll do a business degree because anyone could benefit from like a business degree.
Yeah, right. A little catch-all.
Halfway through the semester, I dropped a couple classes. I was like, accounting sucks. And I found
it's a lot of
math,
like, man.
Yeah, I was like, oh shit, there is a degree program called Exercise and Sports Science. I was like, that looks cool, man. Yeah, I was like, I like working out, and then I was like, there's a prereq. I got to take weightlifting 101. And I'm like, I know how to lift weights, whatever.
Yeah.
And so I walk in at the age of 24, and Dr. Brian Schilling is there, and he's a national competitor weightlifter. And he's like, all right, we're grabbing PVC pipe. And he started introducing me to snatch, and I was like, what? And I fell in love with like Olympic weightlifting that day. And then I competed in that for a couple years. One of my Navy buddies introduced me to CrossFit. I thought it was dumb for like 6 months.
I feel like that's the same thing. Like when I got in, I wrestled my whole life. So I got introduced to CrossFit, and I was like, man, screw that shit. I was like, this is like wrestling practice without actually wrestling at the end of the week. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I got, what am I doing? I was like, I'm done with this, man.
Yeah, I was like, I actually remember making fun of my buddy. And then 6 months later, I was like, wow. I was doing like a lot of jujitsu and like MMA stuff at the time. I was like, that stuff might be good for that, whatever.
Yeah.
So I started trying it out. I was like, this is actually a lot of fun.
Right.
And I was gonna open a weightlifting gym at the time. I was like, I'm gonna open up a weightlifting gym. I was gonna like leave the facility at the University of Memphis and kind of open up my own thing. And then I started doing some CrossFit workouts here and there. I was like, this is way more fun than weightlifting.
Right.
But when you've been doing nothing but weightlifting, like for a couple of years, like CrossFit
no sets over 8, like,
Yeah.
8 rep sets max, and that was like when it was coming up to beach season. I learned that. We're gonna get our cardio in. So just real quick, how did Barbell Shrugged come up? Because I mean, this is like an inspirational channel to me. I mean, I basically have 2 people in my life that has inspired me, or to a certain extent inspired me to do the things I did. I mean, obviously your channel is one of them, and it's kind of hard to not give Kelly his due as well. But both of you guys are just like giving out such knowledge and very little in return. I mean, it's not like I don't see you guys, gold plating a Rolls Royce down the street or anything like that for it. But
I try.
Yeah, right. But it's definitely like it's a selfless deed, right? I mean, you guys just love getting out the information. How did that just come to about?
Well, you know what? Like, I recognize. So I did open a CrossFit gym in 2007. And when I first got into it, I had no idea what I was doing. I had to, anything that wasn't snatch, clean and jerk, squatting, anything that was not like weightlifting oriented,
right.
like muscle ups. I was like, shit, let's watch some YouTube videos and figure out how to do it, right?
Tugging those rings.
Yeah, I mean, this was before they had like all the SMEs and like before I could learn how to do like adult gymnastics from like somebody who knew what they were talking about. But we figured it out, and having some connections with the university and having coaches and stuff like that, and having like a true strength and conditioning background,
Hmm.
you know, in '07, '08, '09, 2010, even like in the region, like where I was living in Memphis, Tennessee, like there just weren't as many guys running. There was a lot of people opening CrossFit gyms that didn't have like the background, you know, like for a lot
I
of
think
gym
that still happens
owners,
though. I think that's one of the things
for sure.
that CrossFit has that ugly stain, and it's not the fact that anybody ever wants to hurt anybody. It's that there's just a lack in education. There's an ignorance in education, and people think because they're a very good athlete themselves, then bam, they just open up a CrossFit gym. But yeah,
Yeah, and the thing is, like, and I think it's awesome. It is the way it's supposed to be. Like,
hmm,
people discover CrossFit and they open up a CrossFit gym. That's fantastic, and it's the world is a better place because of that.
right.
But I was in an interesting position because I had already had a decade of training experience with like really good coaches. Additionally, my business partner Doug Larson,
Hmm.
he had a decade of like he had like the best strength coach growing up. Like he had like a wealth of knowledge before he even got to college.
Hmm.
And then you know we got like guys like Chris Moore who were like he had that West Side barbell background, and it was like there was actually quite a bit of like training knowledge like in my midst, and you know. I would go to competitions, not that I would perform really well, but I would get in conversations with people. And they're like, man, this guy kind of knows something. So
Hmm.
I found myself getting on the phone quite a bit. I was like, people were calling me up, asking me questions. Our gym was doing pretty well additionally. So we were getting gym owners like, you know, how are you running your gym that like it's making money? And how are you like you have a culture in your facility where people are performing well at these competitions.
Right.
You know, we had some athletes. We had strongman going in our facility. We had a powerlifting team. We had a weightlifting team. We had CrossFit Games. Not well. We have had CrossFit Games athletes come through, but we weren't like creating like dozens or anything like that.
Right.
But we had some high level guys doing, especially on the strength side, doing some impressive stuff. So people are calling me and asking me for advice, and I'm like finding myself hours a week just like on the phone. I was like, you know what? I really love having these conversations. I love helping people out, but this is not sustainable. And
Right.
then simultaneously, I was kind of listening to Rob Wolf podcast, which is awesome, very
Hmm.
content driven. Unless you like have some type of weird love for nutrition and biochemistry, you're not gonna. It might not hold your like attention.
Right.
And then one of my buddies who was interning for us at the gym, which is CTP, he's now our camera guy. He he was like, "Yo, you should check out the Joe Rogan podcast."
Dude,
And I
Joe
listened to,
Rogan is awesome.
yeah, I mean, he's an
he's
inspiration, and like,
he's got some of the best podcasts. He's not afraid to say anything.
I know, I totally respect that.
Oh man.
But I listened to his show, and like the first time I listened to Joe Rogan's, I think he talked about mushrooms, like magic mushrooms,
Yeah.
and Sasquatch and aliens, and I was like, dude, you can talk about that was when it
Yeah.
hit me. I was like, you can talk about anything on a show. Oh, well, we should totally do this now. Like once I realized like it could be anything you wanted it to be, I was like, oh well, then we should do something that's
Hmm.
really cool. So I kind of stopped doing the phone call thing with people, and it was like I was like, let's just talk about training on the podcast, and if, you know, we'll interact with people on social media, and we'll figure out what they want to talk about. And it really started off as kind of like a hobby. So
Right.
I had the gym going, but like the podcast was kind of a hobby. I played with it for a couple months. I was trying to figure out who's going to be on the show with me. I was like trying out my different friends to see who.
Which one's got the best personality? Which one says the funniest
Yeah,
jokes?
well, who wants to like who actually can show up week after week? I
Right.
mean, that was a big part of it. It's like who's going to commit? Who's going
Hmm.
to like commit to doing a show every week? And so there was like, you know, a little bit trying different things on, and we finally kind of got our rhythm and found a good dynamic. And you know, we decided pretty much at the beginning of the podcast, like Doug and I specifically, like we're like we're gonna make a business out of this. We saw the amount of freedom it could give us.
Yeah.
We could make good money doing this. It'll allow us to live anywhere we want, like,
Hmm.
and because we both like had aspirations to be more free. In fact,
Right.
like be able to bounce around if we wanted, and just have a different lifestyle than say the typical person.
Right. That's one of the best things about internet in general is it makes everything geographically irrelevant. I mean, you could live wherever you want or bounce around wherever you want as long as you have that internet connection. And that's your business is supplying that information via the web. Then, yeah, I mean, the
Yeah.
world's your oyster in a way.
And the amount of opportunities and the doors that have been open from just like honestly just like giving good advice, and then also getting interviews where we thought we would interview people where we thought maybe this person could give good information. And if you look at the first 10, 20 episodes we just had people locally in our community. Like we had like our professor on from the university at one point, and who we brought on a couple more times since then, and our jiu-jitsu coaches, and like we were just like, we thought this could be helpful. And then it didn't take very much time after that, and then we were getting like, some of the, well, Rich Froning was episode 2, but we lucked out. We lucked out with Rich because I met him at the 22 sectionals or 2010 sectionals, and I was like, man, this guy can't snatch for shit. I was like, I better go give him some advice. And then he just beats everybody. I was like, he didn't give my advice.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know, man. He might not be as technically sound as some people. People bitch about his early arm pull and stuff like that. But God, he just moves and gets in such a good position all the time at the bottom. I don't know. You tell me. You're the expert, right?
I don't think he has an early arm pull. I think he just has an arm pull.
Yeah.
Like, so there's a difference between like an early arm pull is pulling up, and then an arm pull or is more like a row in. So one is like improving leverage, and one is just wasting energy.
This is a total tangent and stuff like that, but they say as long as that arm pull stays in that bent position and it doesn't re-straighten, you're not losing any of that power, right? I mean, versus,
technically, yeah.
Versus like certain people, they just pull it higher in their hip versus.
Exactly. I actually I learned with straight arms, and then over the years I've gone to more of a little bit of a row in, and a little bit of a bent row. And I've actually had people call me out on Instagram. I'm like,
I feel like
I'm like, how much you snatching, fool? Like it's 120 kilos, like, or it's like clean, it's 150 kilo clean, like. And for me, like I find that I have improved leverage in that position,
right?
And and my arm's not re-straightening. So, and then some athletes, they try it out and they go, this is just not for me.
Yeah, I mean, well, there's 1,000 different ways. I feel like people do the Olympic lift, and probably 2,000 ways in which they debate which one is right. And
I think everybody agrees on 95%. They disagree on the 5%, and then they focus on just the things they disagree about.
And they only want affirmation that they're correct, not the debatable points, right?
Right, absolutely.
So anyway, I want to talk about what is the purpose of training. I mean, why are people training? We just finished up the Open, right? I think that the Open came about as this great way to bring the community together. It's definitely changed. There's an evolution in where the Open went to. Back in 2007, or when did it come out? 2010 was the first year that it was internet driven, right?
2010 was sectionals.
So 2011
was the first Open.
Open,
yeah.
Right? I think that when that started,
I'm like having to like.
I know, right?
History. I was there.
But when that came out, I mean, God, there's like everybody in the gym did the CrossFit Open, and they all believed that they can make it to the next step. And especially if you were like a college athlete, you were just like, oh, I'm going to regionals or whatever, right? And now it's like this is a job for some people. So where do you like what is the purpose of training? I think actually some of my friends discuss this the best. When they talk about CrossFit being distinctly two different things. It's a fitness, right? And then there's a sport, right? And they are completely different, right? Because they even talk about breaking down different movements and limiting movements for the sport versus an exploration or expansion of movement towards the fitness. Like, you're not going to see 10 Turkish get-ups for time in the CrossFit Games, but you're going to see very specific barbell movements. You're going to have a clean snatch. You're going to have some type of pull-up. You're going to have, like they know the movements. They're kind of limited besides pegboards, which, by the way, I have no idea how people crapped that out last year because that I could talk about that one for hours. But yeah, so what's the purpose? Like right now, when you see people training, Do you ask them that, like, or like should they be asking themselves that, and kind of jump
Yeah,
on
I mean
that?
that was one reason I wanted to bring that up is because I think that people tend to just do things and never ask themselves why. And and like uh, people join a CrossFit gym because their friend talked them into it. And there's definitely way worse things that
You could be talked
peer
into.
pressure, yeah, that peer pressure could get you into for sure. Uh, but I think a lot of people, they treat their fitness like they treat a lot of aspects of their life. And when we talk about purpose, I'm like, what are you doing on purpose? And so I think most people do most of their life by accident, and and they're not being intentional about much of anything, let alone their fitness. And so
It's really funny that you say that because I'm not sure if you know, but my seminar is called Why Mobility.
I noticed.
And the reason why I put that out there is so there's three pillars that we talk about in the seminar, and the one is mobility, and the other one is stability, and the other one is functional symmetry, because I think that they're all important. But at the end of the day, I want people to be able to answer the question of why they're doing whatever they're doing to fix their ailment, right? So I have people come into the office all the time, and they're like, man, doc, I've been mobilizing my shoulder for a month now, and it still hurts. I just don't, like, what am I doing? Could you show me some more mobility? And I'm like, bro, I don't, even if I wasn't a doctor, right? And you just came up and said, I've been doing this. I've been bashing my head against the wall for a month, and for some reason I have a headache. But they don't understand, like, there's no intent as to why they're doing that mobilization. Okay, well, let's look. I have full shoulder range of motion, but I still have pain. Well, maybe I shouldn't be mobilizing, So we talk about this course because I just want people to leave answering, okay, you're doing X, Y, and Z for this. Just tell me why. And if you can leave answering that question in the course, I mean, shit, you're farther ahead than 90% of the people that are out there.
Yeah, if you don't know why, you can't think. Like, so, if somebody shows up to a class and they just do the WOD and then they leave and it was never explained to them why each movement was chosen. And in 1 hour, there's not enough time for a coach to explain all that. And I think it's the job of the coach to pepper that in here and there. So if somebody is training for a couple years, 2 years in, they're kind of putting the pieces together. But the thing is, if you don't understand the intent or the why of why you're doing a certain movement, or even the why the workout is the way it is today versus yesterday and things like that, then when an obstacle is presented or you can't do a movement, you'll have no idea how to sub that movement. You won't know how to scale that movement. In fact, when people don't understand the why, then those are the people who refuse to scale. Like,
right.
I've been CrossFitting since 2007. I've been training since, I don't know, 95 or 96. And I still scale movements because I understand the why. I go, oh, or for instance, I know that if I do any more overhead stuff, my shoulder's going to bother me. So I'm going to do ring rows instead of pull-ups today. And so when you understand the why, then you're able to be adaptive. You're able to adapt to whatever scenario is thrown in front of you. But if you don't understand the why, and this is anything in your life, like if you don't know why something has to be done or whatever, the moment that there's an obstacle, you're going to get frustrated. And that's because if you don't understand the why, you can't adapt. And so for me, like when I start thinking about purpose, it's like for your seminar, it's people, like, their why is, I want to be able to go overhead without my shoulders getting totally screwed up. I want to be able to get into a nice deep squat. I don't want to be in pain. But then for me, I like to dig deeper and go, why are you even here? Like, why are you even training? What is it that you want to be able to do? Are you doing it because you want to look cool in front of your friends and be able to beat them at this thing? Or is your why
nice Instagram post?
Is your why because you want to live a long, healthy life? Are you trying to be a better rock climber? Are you trying to be a better mom? Are you trying to be a better dad? Are you trying to be like what is your real why? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and if your real why is to get six-pack abs and get a lot of attention, that's going to be a short-lived why, and you're going to make a lot of you're more likely to make sacrifices that are going to be painful. And
Right.
there's going to be more suffering along the way. And when you look at I hang out with guys like Mark Devine of SealFit,
Mm-hmm.
and one of the things he talks about is you'll figure out who's not going to make it through. Who's not going to make it through the week when you have like a Hell Week type challenge. And the people whose why is weak, whose why is external, or they're you listen to the reason they're there, and you're going, yeah, they're not going to make it.
Yeah.
But if their why is like, man, I've got 2 kids, and I want to be able to show them, that person, that's a good why.
Right.
Or like there's certain whys that are I won't say they're better than others, but I think a lot of people, their purpose is not completely aligned with who they really are. And it takes them a lot of failure, repeated failure. And some people are more resistant to listening to that feedback than others. And I think a lot of people, they'll get pretty far and before they actually like dig into the purpose that's really in line with them.
I think talent level has a lot to do with that too, because certain people, they don't have to answer the why for a while. Certain people are so talented. Like you see these people, I'm not calling out Matt Frazier obviously because I think he's extremely talented, but it makes a good point. Somebody like him or Kerry Pierce, right? Both of those athletes, they came in at like 5 months of CrossFit and they made it well, Matt made it the next year and ended up placing second in the games, but Carrie made it her first year, 5 months into it, and then she's going to the games and ends up placing like 21st or 22nd, something like that, which is crazy because they made it so much farther before they'd have to dig down. I think that Matt actually had to ask himself that last year. He was expecting, he had a lot of pressure to go out and compete and stand on top of that podium. I think that when that didn't happen, he had to sit down and ask himself those same questions that you're saying. That's a scalable version to the normal person like myself, right? Who maybe I want to ask that why as to like, why am I getting up to go to the gym that day? And I really have to ask myself and be honest to myself for that. So I think that's an awesome point. If I was to write this down, I'd say, Bledsoe's golden rule to life right now is definitely answering the why, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, if I can't even talk to an athlete about their goals until I ask them why they want to even reach them.
Yeah.
It's like if I sit down and like, oh, what are your goals? And they're like, I'm like, oh, so why do you want to be able to do that? 9 times out of 10, I get a blank stare. Like they don't even know why that's their goal. They're setting those goals because other people have those goals. I'm like, why do you want to squat 400 pounds? Like, and it's always like,
yeah, I'm sure because like I'm picturing you asking me that, and I'm just like, man, if you ask the right question, I'm sure it's gonna catch me, and I'll be like, hold on, let me think about this, And sometimes you don't want to spout out that answer because maybe you're like, hold on, I need to think about it. Maybe I have a dumb answer,
Most people, I think that they feel like it's a dumb answer. They won't say anything. They're like, oh, I'm going to have to go away and think about that.
Yeah.
But that happens quite a bit. I don't know how many times I've someone's asked me a question, I ask them a question back, and then it's 2 or 3 days later, and then I'll get an email or something like that. I'm like, okay, I figured it out. But I think the why is important because if you go into the gym and it's hard, is it hard to get into the gym? Is it hard to go? When you're doing it, is it hard to stay motivated? It's like if your why sucks, if your why is not in line with your purpose, with your life's purpose, or one of your passions or purposes, then you're going to quit. You're going to fail. You're not going to make it very far. You'll be excited about a new goal. You'll get excited for 2, 3, 4 weeks, maybe even 5 or 6 months. But once that excitement dies down,
and the going gets tough,
it's going to go away. And so I think a lot of people like to talk about discipline and willpower and stuff like that. I actually don't think it has as much to do with that as I think the people who you point at and you go, oh, this guy's got a lot of discipline. It's like, that dude's got a why. And and he's
So
willing to
here's a
go
question then
die for
for
that
you:
lie.
is what
Yeah.
do you tell the people that do give you the blank stare? Like, how do you tell them to figure out? Listen, bro, you need to go figure out your why. Like, what do you like? What? Give me some steps because I know there's gonna be people that are listening to this and be like, "Damn, I don't know my why." Like, you know what I mean? Like, so how do they go
uh,
about answering that question when they have that blank? Like,
uh, a lot of times you just gotta go like, I do have a series of questions written down somewhere for really messing with people, and I'm blanking out right now. But yeah, a lot of times I'm like, this is not something you're gonna figure out in the next 5 minutes.
yeah.
Like trying to like get this out of you right now isn't gonna be very helpful. Yeah, you just got to figure out what's most important to you.
I feel
Like,
like you can be like my 6-year-old niece, right? So if I come up and I say, "Oh, hey, Mike, like, why'd you start, Barbell Shrugged?" and he's like, "Oh, well, I want to give out good information," and she says, "Why?" And then like you say, "Well, because good information helps people," and then she says, like, "Why?" And then like like you could continually ask that until you get down to that rudimentary like fundamental element. I feel like you can run with that for a little bit, or maybe even have people put that on a piece of paper. Like, okay, I want to be a games athlete. Well, why? Because games athletes go on ESPN. Well, why? Like I don't know.
yeah, it can get down into some weird places when you start really digging into the why. Like, one of the things I like to visit with people is their relationship with their parents.
Ooh, I want to
And
make mom and
so,
dad proud.
yeah, so um, uh, I know I know this from personal experience, and I know this from working with a lot of people is uh, people's lives change when their parents die sometimes,
Mm,
and and a lot of times that has to do with like, well, I no longer have to impress dad,
mm,
and so like, but you never knew that was why you. And then if you think long enough, I like to go, okay, so what are the things that you learned from your parents that were good? What were the things you learned from your parents that weren't so good? Like what kind of expectations did they have for you? What kind of perceived expectations? Like,
mm-hmm.
did they really have those expectations, or did you build those up in your own mind? I was
Yeah,
really good at that because I was hard on myself as a kid.
yeah.
But
I can. It's
I
so
remembered
crazy because
I
like,
remembered as my parents being hard on me. But when I look back objectively, they weren't being hard on me. I had like this weird story going on in my head.
but you always felt like you needed to impress them in a way, right? Like you
Absolutely.
always felt like you needed to go just that little extra. It's so weird that you say that because like I would do these like games in my head all the time. Like I said, I grew up on a dairy farm, so like just things like like scraping the drop down. Like my dad would go to take manure out, and I'd be like, I'm gonna have all the drops clean by the time he gets back. Like like stuff like that. And I know that it was just always like I always wanted to see him like proud of me, like happy of me. I could 100% relate to that. I bet you a lot of people out there can too. Which is wow. That's a startling realization I just made myself. Look at you're bringing me full circle.
Actually, I got a few questions, and I've done a lot of like personal development type courses and read some books, and so this is kind of from a collection. Some of these questions are actually there's some good ones. If you're a man, there's a book called Backbone, which I'm a
Backbone.
huge fan of, and he goes through some of these questions in there. But just things like what gets you out of bed in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
What do I spend most of my energy on in life? I think those can be for somebody who's like trying to be a competitive athlete. Sometimes that can be deceptive
Uh
because
huh.
you'll create that story that might not necessarily be true. The ones that really hit me is how would I spend my time if I had only 1 year to live?
Oh,
Um, what unique gifts do I have to offer the world? If I knew I couldn't fail, what life path would I attempt? And just kind of like asking yourself, like, what is my deep purpose in life? And so, a lot of this stuff comes with maturity, and I actually have warned athletes in the past because I'll like when people get to know me, they go, okay, Mike is a little more interested in some other things that aren't quite like snatching
yeah.
300 pounds.
You and Joe are gonna get like the ayahuasca going, man. You just solve
Yeah,
everything.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I've gone to Peru and done the ayahuasca.
How was
Um,
total weird tangent? How was that, man?
life changing,
Life changing.
enlightening. Yeah, it took me about a month to recover.
Get
If
out.
you were to talk to my wife, she's like, yeah. I mean, she had to be patient with me for like a month afterwards because I was not the same person. Like
Wow.
you don't come back the same.
No.
Like for me personally, I went through a lot of my childhood and filtered out a lot of the stuff that there were things that served me and then didn't serve me. I was able to look at basically from the ages of 7 to 15 and look at pinpoint every moment in time that was something that was good for me now, and I got to keep it. And then I got to take all the stuff that is not good for me now, and I got to throw it away.
That's crazy. That's crazy. I mean, it almost makes me want to go book a flight right now. Like it's when I listen to Joe talk about it, I just needed a second opinion. I was like, because he's a crazy dude, so to hear him talk about it.
I'm not sure he's done it yet. I think his friends have done it. If he's done it, I haven't heard about it
I
yet.
swore he has.
He might have.
I think he talked about it he was like featured on like the London Reel or something like that, or maybe it could have been one of his friends, but he talks about it so much that I get a little confused, maybe back and forth.
One of his friends, Aubrey Marcus, who's also a business partner of his with On It. Aubrey has been doing that stuff for a long time.
Yeah.
Before it was like a thing. So if you want to hear my story about my ayahuasca experience down in Peru in detail, just go to Aubrey Marcus's podcast,
okay.
episode 51. And so I tell my story in detail, and then Doug as well. Actually, he and I went down there together.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so like a lot of times I get discussing, like, I get with an athlete and we start getting deep into purpose. And, sometimes I'll be approached. If they approach me and they go, okay, I know there's something up with this. I know you've got some insight. Like, I'd like to figure this out. And I give them the warning. I'm like, if you find your purpose, there's a good chance you're going to quit competing as an athlete. And they're like, oh. It's like, so it might not mean you're going to quit. Like a lot of athletes, they would still keep doing what they're doing. Mm-hmm. But I think for a majority of athletes, they get in there and they'll go, maybe they end up finding that their life's purpose has nothing to do with winning competitions. And right. so they're like, wow, for every day I spend trying to win this thing and get on a podium, I'm not doing the other thing I'm supposed to be doing. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of things in this world that I personally would like to be different for me to, and I use things like Barbell Shrugged to try to get people to ask themselves different questions. Mm-hmm. So that they'll be more intentional about their life.
Yeah. I think that's awesome. I mean, this is almost sports psychology, right? I mean, if you have
absolutely is.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like you're a double tiered coach here. I mean, sure, you could talk about their snatch and their clean and jerk and whatnot and their metabolic conditioning, but if they don't know why they're doing it, if they can't answer that question, then at the end of the day, it's all for nothing. And if you can get them to answer that deep question and it does align and correspond with their goals that they're doing, I mean, that makes that person all the more powerful, right? But at the same time, if it doesn't, lets the person go off and be like, all right, man, well, I'm supposed to be flying, like hot air balloons, and that's what I really want to do. And
yeah. Either way, if you discover your purpose, whether you're going to stay a competitive athlete or move on to something else, either way, you're free.
Yeah.
Because somebody who's living outside of their purpose is a slave. And so that's why I'm passionate about it, because I don't like hanging out with people who are slaves, mm-hmm. Of like, who always point to external things as to why they do things or don't do things. Mm-hmm. And I really enjoy hanging out with people who are like, I do these things because I believe in this and I make things happen, and things don't happen to those people. You can hear it in the language, the things they say, like you get talking to somebody and I was like, oh, I got screwed over. I'm like, oh, that's the language of a person who's does not feel in control of their own life. Mm-hmm. And so it's so getting into sports psychology a little bit, I mean, that's just straight up, I don't know if you call that even psychology or spirituality or what you could call it, but it's like the path I'm interested in the most, because
it's in the mind and it's not brain, it's not a muscular function. So I think Yeah, I mean, what else would you call it? Spiritual sports guidance. I mean, but
Yeah.
we could
The,
still jump down to psychology there. I mean,
yeah, and
we're altering with the mind and getting the mind to either strengthen or straighten, I guess, right?
I remember taking sports psychology in college, and I was like, "This is the dumbest thing." I remember being like, 20 something, and being like this hardened guy, and like I'm like, I just remember being like, "This is a dumb class. I don't need this. I'm just a disciplined dude.
Hmm.
Other people are weak if they need this." And I wish I would have paid better attention. And then I've also come to realize that like if you don't have that part figured out, everything else will fall apart.
Hmm.
So to me, that's the most important piece. You got to get, if you can get that in line first, everything else will just line right up.
Right, right, right. And I think that it makes even more sense coming from a person that seems like you were on the other side of that spectrum, and
I was.
now you're on the side that you're teaching at. You're like, listen, I know why I'm doing what I'm doing, and that purpose is clear to me. My path is clear, but it was very clouded, and I didn't realize why I was doing what I was doing. And when I stopped and I answered those questions, I made those changes, and I think that coming from a person that's walked that line, been in those trenches, that means so much more. I think that guidance helps so much more.
Yeah, I think that's why I feel kind of like that's kind of my purpose or my obligation in informing people, kind of trying to get them to maybe see things a little bit differently because I was like that.
Hmm.
I was a completely different person, 5, 10 years ago, and there's been a vast shift, and my level of fulfillment and happiness is like way higher for it. And I kind of look back at some of my old behaviors and chuckle and
Right.
kind of it's even embarrassing. I look back and I go, oh man, I can't believe like I put so much focus into this thing, and like which I look back and I'm like, it didn't even matter. So, from like an athletic perspective now, like I probably I train a lot still,
Hmm.
and I do CrossFit. I try to go up to Mike Bergner's place, which is only a half hour from where I live now, and do some weightlifting. I try to train with Julian Pinot
Man.
when I can. I still train a lot, but when people ask me, they go, "Oh, you going to compete again?" I'm like,
Mm,
probably not. Like
probably not.
it's like I really enjoy like building that capacity so that anytime I want to do anything physical,
Uh-huh.
like I can just do it.
I
I want my
that's
joints
so
to feel
awesome that
good.
you just said that. I have patients that come in all the time, and we talk about just like deconditioning and this is again a different, like a little tangent, but we, like, people nowadays with the advancement of technology and whatever, they just allow themselves to become so deconditioned, like everything that we take for granted, like, oh, I used to have to go get a pail of water down at the river, like just weird shit like that these things don't happen anymore because I make the joke all the time about a book report. I'm 33, right? When I had to do a book report, I had to walk to a library, look up the Dewey Decimal System, find a book, read it, right, and then walk back. Just the energy that was expended in that, right, was like 10 times what it is now. Because now I'm just like, Siri, what is this, right? And Siri tells me all about it. I just type it all out. I don't even have to type. I can just tell Siri to type it. And
I could not leave my house for days on end.
right, and you have, as long as you have bread and water, you're fine.
Yeah.
But we see these people become so deconditioned that they make their world smaller. And my biggest thing and my biggest fear in life is I joke all the time about always being ready for the zombie apocalypse, right? Because
Got it.
like
You got it.
it's just the fact that like I don't ever want to be limited by my own physical capacity. Yes, I understand that I'm not independently wealthy, so I can't do just anything I wanted. But like dead serious, if somebody said to me, "Hey, Tim, I want to go climb Mount Everest tomorrow, and I'm going to take you with me." Like, I'd be like, "Oh, it's not going to cost me 45 grand to do it. Okay, let's do it." Like, like I'm in. I would never want to be like, "Oh, I can't because I got to go train for 6 months so that I can do that." Like, no, like,
Yeah, I mean, I actually, because of Barbell Shrug, because of doing that show, I think that helped open my eyes to a lot of these things.
uh huh,
Um, Training to be a weightlifter, and then doing the show, and then showing up in Vermont at Joe DeSena's doorstep, and the Spartan race guy.
Uh-huh.
And it's like, oh, we're going to work out tomorrow morning, 5 a.m. I'm like, okay. And having like this, I mean, I've had a background in CrossFit and military and like endurance. And I'm like, oh yeah, whatever. And then getting out there and getting my ass handed to me and feeling very incapable
Mm-hmm.
and going and knowing that like a few years ago, this would have been easier.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, man, the ideas around like GPP, general physical preparedness,
Uh-huh.
have got really diluted in my mind. And
Mm.
the interesting thing is the older I become, the more GPP is important. Like
Right.
I literally, yeah, I just want to be able to go run a Spartan race one day, and I want to be able to go snatch the next day, and I want to be able to go surfing the day after that, and whatever. Like
That
I
is
want to be
beautiful,
able
right?
to do these things. Yeah,
Because
and it's like,
that one side of the bell curve is actually like, that can be scaled down so much to like, listen, the older deconditioned, grandma out there, I mean, maybe she just wants to get up and walk up and down her stairs and be able to go to the bathroom without assistance, and that's still her general physical preparedness at that stage of her life. But we see this, and we see these stages skewed. We see the 35-year-old person that can't walk up and down the stairs because they become so, deconditioned and obese, and literally lack the physical capabilities of doing these things that, you know, everyday people shouldn't think as even a consideration, as like, it's just like what you do. Like, if my car broke down 5 miles from home, well, I'm gonna walk home. Like, I wouldn't be like, oh my God, what would I do? Because I can't walk home, because I can't walk 5 miles.
yeah,
Everyone should be able to be able to tackle whatever that. It doesn't have to be 5 miles. It could be whatever that task is at hand. They should be able to accomplish that. And I think that's like the fitness of life that
yeah.
we all should strive for.
And I think that kind of goes back to purpose too. Is like the person who's obese who has a hard time just getting from their house to the car to the office,
Mm-hmm.
and they're huffing and puffing getting up and down the stairs. Is when I see a person like that, I feel really bad for them, and I go, man, that person more than likely lacks purpose. Like just generally in their life, they probably feel like a victim of the world, and they're not somebody who, because if they were committed to something that was greater than themselves, and so a lot of times, like as you get older, you start thinking about that more.
Mm-hmm.
You stop thinking so much about yourself, and you start thinking about other people more.
Right.
And maybe you get to the point where you actually think about humanity.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of like there's an evolution of consciousness. In the beginning, you worry about yourself. You just want the teat, and then you get where you like, oh, okay, it's me and my family.
Mm-hmm.
Screw everybody else. And then you get to the point you're like, okay, it's me and my family and my hometown and my, and the football team. Those are my people. And then you get older and you're like, my country. And then you go, and then if you get to a point, some people, they stop at one of those along the line. Right. They just go, I'm going to stop. I don't need to go any further. But then some people get as far as like, hey, all of humanity, like maybe my purpose goes to that point. And when your purpose exists, when you see something in the world that you want to be different and you make that your life,
right,
then you're not going to be obese. Like, because that like you have to increase your physical capacity in order to do your job better. Mm-hmm. So, you're like, you and me are perfect examples. Like, we're doing the things that we really want to do. We love our work. We want to make the world a better place. But how many people are working at jobs that just kind of go, they're just humming along? Yeah. For somebody to take their health and seriously, when that is the level of consciousness they're operating at, is very, very difficult. Mm-hmm. But if you find somebody who's like, man, I want to, I hate to bring this up, it's so cliche, Gandhi, like that guy, like he made every point in his life about that purpose, about freeing those people from, that oppression. Mm-hmm. And so like, if you can find, it doesn't have to be like freeing slaves. Like that doesn't have to be your purpose. But, your purpose could be something simpler than that. But that's going to be, for me, it's like, I have a team, and I want to make sure that everyone on my team is taken care of. And I want to, I think, Barbell Shrugged as a show is extremely important in the world. And I know that in order to do that, like, I need to be performing at the highest level mentally, and my physical being has to support, my mind.
Right.
And so, like, a big part of my motivation at this point is like, man, it's capacity and longevity. It's like, if I can be, the more fit my body is and the more healthy my body is, the more capable I am in the world to accomplish my purpose.
Right.
So
Durability. We talk about durability all the time.
Yeah. So it's like when somebody, I want to take it back to that purpose. When someone lacks that purpose, like, there's no reason for them to have capacity. There's no reason for them to have longevity. They may not really.
In fact, you hear some of them say, like, "Yeah, so what if I die tomorrow?" Or like, "What happens if I die next week?" Whatever. Like,
yeah, I mean, they may fear death, but they don't love their life enough,
to change.
Yeah, it's like the people who are going to do really, really well, they're doing it because they love their life. But the people who just fearing death is not a motivation enough to, like, kick it into gear. It's usually like, people, they go to the doctor and they get their blood work done and their cholesterol's all fucked up, and they're like, oh, I just got scared enough to hit the gym, and then 2 months later they're not there anymore. The people who, like, get that death scare and then stick it out, they end up finding out something to love. There's somebody in their family like, oh man, you know what? I need to be there for them. But if somebody doesn't have that love driving them, then that's where they're going to kind of hit that
I feel
wall.
like that has to be like an inward, self-inspiration, because I try to implement that, to people sometimes. I try to, like, relay my enthusiasm towards that, and I fail miserably, and I get very frustrated. I go home and I talk to my parents about it, and my to be completely honest, my father's one that just drives me batty over it, because I think that he can improve his health. He's not unhealthy, but he's not where I want him to be. He had a heart attack in the past, and I'm like, why? And it's just I find that you can't make somebody's motivation for them, that they somehow have to find that, and all you can do is kind of help peel back the layers so they can see it. And if they see it and they accept it, then that's okay. But if they don't and they choose to ignore it, you're in for a fight, because I feel like that's what happens to me sometimes.
Yeah, you can only be a guide.
It's what my patients sometimes too. I'm just.
My dad used to say, you can lead a horse to water.
Yeah. Can't make it drink. Yeah, exactly, right. Well, listen, Mike, I can't tell you enough how much I'm thankful of this. This wasn't at all where I thought we were going to start out or end, but I'm so glad that it went this way. I hope that we can do this again sometime. Like I said, if I can recap one thing that I've taken from this, and I'm definitely almost even going to go home and start writing this out for myself, is answering the question of why. And the coolest thing is, because I didn't really know you personally that much. I bumped into you a whole bunch of times. I thought you're an awesome dude and stuff like that. That's why I asked you to do this. But I didn't realize the depth. Like, there's many layers to you, and you are a deep person, man, and knowledgeable as well, and inspirational. So I can't thank you enough for coming on today, and hopefully enlighten everybody else that watches this. I thought it was awesome for you to do it. So thank you.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it. Thanks for helping me, talk even more.
Anytime, my man. I really do appreciate it. All right. Any parting words for me? In the words of Gandhi.
For you or for the audience?
No, in the audience. In the words of Gandhi.
Man, I don't know. I mean, you know what? One thing I do want to leave with is, people haven't seen me on the Barbell Shrugged show much recently. And April 13, we're releasing a show we did. It's more like a TV show with NASA. And get ready for that. Tune in.
I saw some pictures on there on Instagram. You guys were like staring at helmets and stuff like that.
It was nuts. It was awesome.
So cool, man.
We got a series of shows coming out that I think people are going to really enjoy.
Awesome. Well, I'll make sure that I put all your contact information up there. so that they can get onto your channel, watch all your stuff like that, and I'll spread the word as much as I can, because your stuff is awesome and it's legit, and I really do appreciate you for also spreading your knowledge to the rest of the community out there, because knowledge is power, and the only knowledge that is worth nothing is the knowledge that you don't share. It's my own little saying.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
So I try to live by that, and that's one thing that I'm all about is if we can make ourselves more educated, we can stop a lot of things that of ignorance, right? So hopefully we can do that. Again, thank you so much, Mike. I really do appreciate it, and hopefully see you again.
Thanks for having me, Tim.
Awesome.